as the introduction said, I'm Andrew McClelland, Chief Operations and Policy Officer for IMRG. Been with the organisation for over 10 years, so I've seen it from online retail being very, very small to being a major channel. And when people start talking about mobile, well, that was about 6 or 7 years ago, and it was always 2 years away. Well, now we're actually at a point where it's looking something realistic. It's a major contributor to online retail sales now. So we'll go into that in a little bit more detail. But first of all, Matt, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Matt Norbury. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called IAT. I've been an entrepreneur for 12 years, having set up my first tech startup when I was at school doing my A-levels. That product actually it spanned web and mobile, so this particular topic's been sort of close to my heart for a number of years now. IAT, we are a startup based in Shoreditch. We've raised 17 million venture capital, and we have a suite of products in the omnichannel retail space, spanning first off customer satisfaction with a product called Ratings Plus, loyalty through a currency called ePoints, and our newest product to the market that we're working with a number of retailers on is an end-to-end marketing platform, very much focusing around mobile, which is called Big Deals Local, Big DL.
Excellent, thank you very much, Matt. So, a little bit of scene setting to start with. I think one important thing to think about is, we talk about mobile, and I'd like to challenge some of that in a moment, but just to give you an overview of where online retail is or was last year. So IMRG measure online sales on a monthly basis through their index. We've also just launched a benchmarking mechanism that allows you to get that data in real time. So visit the stand to have a look at that. But it's building on the insight that we're getting from the index. Now, I'm not going to go through each and every individual number here, but I think it's key to show that mobile's increasing, yes, but why? And what is it behind it? And really, what are we doing as consumers that's different? Because we're all consumers. We tend to think of these things in this context as consumers as a third party. Well, how are we interacting with brands now? How have we changed the way that we buy products and services? So again, these are the figures from last year. Now, the bit that I want to challenge to start with is when people talk about mobile, we've got to differentiate between tablet and smartphone. Tablet is a displacement activity from laptops or desktops. People are shopping on their sofas. It's not what we would really consider as mobile. As a device, it's increased convenience. It's increased the ability for people to interact with a brand, multi-screen, etc. It's also opened online up to a whole new audience of people that would have been a little bit daunted by having a laptop with lots of keys in front of them that they're worried about breaking. A tablet's a very inane product. You can poke it, you can swipe it, and it does stuff. You don't feel as though you're going to damage it or break it. So in the conversations that we're having this afternoon, we are talking about smartphone and what's happening with smartphone. Now, I've got some latest numbers for you on that basis. So the August figures from IMRG's M-Retail Index. So we're looking at the average basket value of smartphones, now £76. So actually, if you look at the overall average basket value of online at around 80, you can start seeing that smartphones playing an increasing role in how we are shopping for products and services. It's also mobile. It is truly mobile. It brings immediacy back to our conversations with brands. We see an advert on the side of a bus or on a billboard or in a magazine. We can interact with them 9 times out of 10. It gives us a chance to react to the call to action. So as advertisers in the offline space, we've now got a medium that enables us to have a live conversation with our customers. Yeah. I think one of the other statistics that in some ways gets my goat a little bit is that when we start talking about the number of smartphones that are in circulation, yes, it's great. The number of smartphones are rapidly increasing. Well, actually, you try buy a dumb phone these days. The only phones you can buy are smartphones, unless you really try quite hard. So the question is then, how many people understand what they have in their hands? How many people understand the power and the abilities that they have with that smartphone? And I think we, as retail brands, have got an opportunity to bring our customers with us. So if you go back 10 years, all of the investment in online was being done by consumers. Consumers were buying computers, they were buying broadband, or at that time dial-up access. They were sitting waiting for retail brands to come along. To a degree, that balance has shifted. We've now got lots of retail brands coming out with device-responsive sites, or they're talking about how shoppers come to them through mobile devices and smartphones. There's still a lot of our customers out there that don't necessarily know what to do with their smartphone. And I think that brings us quite nicely into some conversations we can have around how the smartphone experience transcends the barriers or the differences in channels. Now, personally, I don't like the term omni-channel, because omni means just there is. Well, it's just retail. And retail's selling more stuff to more people. And consumers shop with brands, they don't shop with channels. So what we need to understand is how this technology impacts the consumer's relationship with our brand and how we can have those conversations with our customers in those different channels where smartphones really are bringing the focus back down from everything being online to actually I'm stood in your store. So there's a number of surveys out, and Google have done plenty of work in this area. The majority of searches via a smartphone are around a product or a service in the area. It's about on the move. It really is about I have a need or a demand or a requirement for information now, where I am based. And that actually brings in some quite nice, interesting points for us to talk about on the high street. How does this technology change then impact the high street? So I think this is quite an interesting place to start on this conversation. And if anyone's got any questions as we go or want to make a point, please do raise your hands. There is a microphone we'd like you to use just so everyone can hear what the questions are. But I think the first question that I'll probably put to you, Matt, is how are you using technology when you go on the high street? What are you using it for?
Okay. I think obviously we're all joined at the hip with our phones, and increasingly checking our phones dozens of times a day. And I'm probably pretty bad at that, even at dinner, checking my phone, which my wife beats me up over. And when I'm shopping, it I suppose becomes a powerful source of information for my shopping journey. So I suppose for me, there's two examples. One was last Christmas. 2 days before Christmas, I had to go out and do my Christmas shop, and literally last second I had to go to, I live in Reading, so I went to the high street in Reading, and realised I had to get something for my mum. What do you buy? What do you buy your mum? No idea. And I took a picture of some awful ornament that I thought, she might like, sent it to my sister, whose response was no, don't get this. And then I got a text back with a specific thing and store to buy it from. So in that example, it saved me wasting some money and sort of, I suppose, my mum, it's the thought that counts, so she would have been all right. But it's having that immediacy of not being limited to your own frame of knowledge. So all the stats are out there. The Google are great, but 8 in 10 smartphone owners will use a smartphone through the course of a purchase in a high street. And that's not limited to category now. So originally, I think it was very much electronics driven, around product reviews and pricing, but apparently 2/3 of baby products are now bought and it's influenced with a smartphone, as an example. And people that use smartphones spend more than people who don't. So I think there's definitely price. You are driven, especially in today's society, by price. But quality is really important. So again, another example. Recently, I was in Currys. I had to buy a camera, so we moved house. And the day before the party, so I went to buy a camera. And the guy in Currys was very knowledgeable, giving me lots of advice on which one to buy. I know nothing about cameras. But my first inclination was to go to Google and search for top 10 cameras for under 500 quid or whatever it was. Because do I trust the guy at Currys, or do I want to use the internet? Of course I want to draw on all that expertise that's out there. So it's about having that access at your fingertips. And that actually, in that case, I bought online with Amazon. So it's probably not what Currys would have liked, but they can't stop it. And they didn't have Wi-Fi, which I know is one of the things we'll come on to, which is a bit of a frustration. But anyway, I think it's about having that peer endorsement, having the information as to what's the best quality and the price. And obviously availability.
Yeah.
Before you get to the shops, you want to know where you can get a product.
And I think you mentioned about Wi-Fi as well. So one of the key drivers with in-store Wi-Fi has been around getting close to your customer. But likewise, one of the key issues that certainly the board have around providing Wi-Fi is that they know that everyone's exhibiting the same behaviours as Matt, or they think they are. You're going into a store, you're having a look around, you're looking at a product, you're touching and feeling, and then actually all you're doing is then going out and comparing prices. It becomes a fancy showroom. And I think what I would suggest to combat that is that this is actually an opportunity to have a conversation with that customer. So if you're giving them Wi-Fi, you get a certain amount of information back, yes. But actually, the experience that you have around a sales assistant talking to you about a product that you don't necessarily trust, couriers will invest an awful amount of money in having a social network presence where their customers are having conversations about products, they're reviewing products, they're talking about the good things and the bad things. Well, actually, why can't you take that experience into store? So when you go onto a shelf edge, you have a mechanism, maybe a QR code, maybe something a bit fancier, that actually enables you as the customer to see what people are talking about that product. So as a retail brand, you've then got an excuse to open a conversation. And you might not be the cheapest, but a customer might be saying online that they had a really good customer experience with you in that process. I think that on that point, though, are we then starting to look at where is our customer? Where are they based in the store? How can we track them? Is there a reason for us to track them in the store?
I think, yeah. I mean, it leads on nicely to that. I mean, we as a technology platform, we use Beacon technology fairly extensively, and we are doing a number of things around aisle level communication. So you are in 30 centimeter proximity of a product. What, as a brand, would you like to communicate? And there are loads of opportunities. So there's a sort of a big drinks brand that we're shortly working with that's very much around branded video content. So it's not about discount. It's not about push them an offer, devalue my brand. This is about getting them to engage with some great content. I mean, going back to the example in curries, the reason I bought from Amazon was they had this brilliant, it was a Sony camera, brilliant video on Amazon, which I watched in depth, showed you every feature, really user-friendly. And I thought afterwards, why couldn't a curries have a video like that in the store, either triggered by QR code, NFC, whatever, or alerted as I'm playing with the product? It's such a missed opportunity because I'm sure the other cameras there were good, but I just happened to find one that I felt on the balance of information available were better. But definitely, coming back to it, yeah, I mean, using technology, you can also, we're working with some retailers to track dwell time as well. So if you know somebody's spending a disproportionate amount of time in a specific area of the store, surely you should get a sales assistant over to engage with that person. So I think, yeah, the technology's there, and it all comes down to how retailers engage and brands engage. Most importantly, how do they do it responsibly? And how do they do it in a way that doesn't cross that line in terms of privacy and people's comfort levels with what we are tracking and what we know about them?
But how do you, as a technology provider, cut through all the fog that we as consumers are facing? Every time we open our phone up, we're getting hit with emails, we're getting hit with apps that remind us to go and feed the sheep or the pigs or something. How do we make sure that we can cut through that and deliver a relevant message to the customer?
Well, I think it's the big challenge. I think everybody recognises mobile, smartphone is absolutely critical to retail over the next however many years. The sort of head Forrester researcher summed it up quite well. Bernhoff, I think his name is, that never has there been a stronger desire for retail to succeed in mobile, but actually, in essence, do they have the tools to do it? It comes back, a great quote from Larry Page around the toothbrush test. Is it something as a mobile platform that consumers, like when you brush your teeth, will do every day? You've got to give them a reason to engage. There's a real reason, and let's face it, consumers aren't going to download 50 retailer apps, or the only thing they'll download in that sort of volume is games, really, and sort of fun stuff. So, our philosophy is about bringing it all together in a single platform. But there are retailers that are doing it well and actually adding so much sufficient value that it's worth engaging on a frequent basis, because you can get people to download stuff, but they won't use it. They'll drop off. So it comes back to what is that key piece of value a consumer's getting. I use value in its broadest sense, and how do we use technology to personalize the experience and learn from everything consumers do? Every interaction or not interaction is a signal that you can learn from. If you are communicating a message using technology, you'll know when a consumer opens it, you'll know when they don't. It's like all the benefits of online through a smartphone. So, you can learn, and if you're focused on that, actually things can get more and more relevant, and consumers will be more and more satisfied. I think for me, it all comes back to customer satisfaction, customer service. That's why people like John Lewis, the leaders in customer satisfaction, were one of the first to roll out Wi-Fi across their stores, free and open. It stands to reason. You've got to empower the consumer. Got to give them enough, I suppose, value for them to really bother. Why bother otherwise?
Yeah. So we did some research we do quarterly research with eDigital Research, Customer Service Index. And through that mechanism, you start looking at what people are doing on their mobile phones. And the majority of the time, they're actually checking their emails. They might be sat in your store, but they're not actually doing the price comparison. So how are we going to cut through, again, it's that grab for attention. Do we need to put stuff at point of sale saying, log into our Wi-Fi? Do we need to tell customers in our stores what to do, how to do it?
I don't think so. I think on the Wi-Fi point, I saw some research recently with Arkiva did on attitudes to Wi-Fi in store, and it's becoming a prerequisite consumers expect. I think one in 4 people said they're less likely to come back if there's not Wi-Fi in a store. 1 in 4 said they leave as soon as possible. And 7% would tell people not to shop there because there's not Wi-Fi. Now, that might be a bit extreme, but an anecdote from me as well. I was clothes shopping with my wife. It was a painful experience in the world. And the store in question, a fashion retailer, did have Wi-Fi. So I logged on, did my email. I checked Man United under Moyes losing, I think, last season. Dire. And I did a bit of Twitter. And by the time I'd done all that, my wife had spent a fortune, but I didn't pull her out of the store because I'd be moaning otherwise. I'd be saying, "Come on, let's go." So if there wasn't Wi-Fi and in this particular area there wasn't a signal, we would have left much sooner. She'd have spent a lot less. Now the activity, I suppose the point being, my activity had nothing to do with the purchase. Quite the opposite. I wasn't comparing prices, none of that stuff, no reviews. It was personal stuff using their Wi-Fi for my gain, but in essence they got far greater sales out of it than they would otherwise. So I think consumers know, and I'm 30. I'm probably not the real people we should be studying. It's the generation younger than me. I've got a 2-year-old son who uses my iPhone, and it's, I suppose, that generation where they don't need to think. They are in autopilot with technology. It's a bit zombie-like and a bit scary to see kids glued to phones, but that's the way it is. And I think so you don't need to educate, really. They'll expect to either find an app, find your Wi-Fi. They'll expect that stuff. They'll expect for there to be a real reason to do it, ideally around personalization. We did some market research with a company called Retail Practice. 78% of the consumers they surveyed would give personal information to get relevant offers. And I think if you rewind 10 years, that number would have been far greater. Why would I tell you about my personal preferences, about my age and gender? Why would I give you that information? But nowadays, it's if they're getting something valuable in return, they will part with the information.
So there's a benefit equation that's going on constantly, which might change as well each time I visit the store.
Totally, it should. I mean, it should change. It should change over time, and that's the benefit of technology. Loyalty, whether it's points, whether it's rewards, whether it's a free cup of tea, whatever it might be, can be measured accurately, and you can measure the ROI of anything you're doing using the device. So it should learn. It should be one of these, it should be an algorithm behind the scenes, learning and learning and learning, not for the reason of selling data, for the reason of personalizing the experience so that people it's effortless then to engage with you. It becomes easier every time.
Now, we spend, as retailers, an awful lot of money online around customer acquisition and driving traffic to our sites, and then looking intimately at the conversion rates and understanding where people have come from. Is there a role or a model that we can transfer into the offline world? Because I know we generate footfall into our stores through a range of advertising primarily. But actually, we don't have a huge amount of control outside of our shop, do we?
Yeah, I think you do. Retailers do, and it's an emerging area. I mean, it's very much driven by smartphone. I mean, an example of what our platform does, and there are others out there, it's not a push of our own thing, but we enable a retailer to communicate a message. Could be a deal, could be a voucher, could be just the fact that one of our sports retailers does free tennis racket restringing, so you don't have to buy the racket with them. You can go in and get your racket restrung. Stuff that people locally don't know, and that value-added proposition. So you can communicate that message, and then you can see in real time who did it reach, who opened that message, who didn't, and then using beacon technology, and all of that is time-stamped and distance from branch, so you know exactly where this is happening. Is it happening at home? Is it happening on the bus? You know, at the moment, there's lots of theories and one-off studies, but this is real data as to what's really happening. Through to the people that saw that message, how many came in store? So you can use beacons to measure footfall. So you can obviously, an app can communicate to a beacon. You can see people not only walk past the store, but if you have a secondary beacon, you can measure that someone actually's come in, and you can look at the uplift of that message. Through to, did they buy something? So whether that's using mobile couponing to see what they've redeemed, or whether that's loyalty to see what they bought, you can join all that together, and you've got that end-to-end. Now, the retailers we're aware of that are really pushing the curve are then linking that into their online proposition as well, and into their email strategy, into everything they're doing to actually see the full end-to-end. I think they're the people that are really going to be setting the standard as to how to optimize what you're communicating to your customers on what basis.
And in a more basic model I've seen is a charity that's working to understand how technology impacts in a city. And what they're doing is they're actually using RFID tags that are handed out by the local bakers and the butchers, etc., primarily to older people, and using that as a mechanism that can then be redeemed in a technology store, a social centre of the community. And that's being used then to drive footfall into local shopping centres. So older people are being carried or being taken by their younger relatives into these stores, into the shopping centres. That's driving traffic into the shopping centre. But at the same time, the people that are carrying these tokens are also then being shown technology and being encouraged to interact with technology. And again, it's taking another mechanism that we're using in the online space and driving traffic into your stores. Now, before we go on to the next couple of areas, are there any questions from the floor that anyone would like to raise, or comments or thoughts on how technology is impacting the online and the offline retail experiences? Yes, please. Is there a... No. Sorry, can we have this down the front here, please?
Sorry for making you run. How do you guys think discounting is working on mobile? So things like Shopitize and Checkout Smart, and people are doing cashback and in-store discounting from a loyalty perspective. Is that going to be something that's going to grow within the market, or is that something that's a risk or a challenge?
Yeah, I'm familiar with those guys, and we do a fair amount of mobile couponing as well. I mean, I think with any brand, and I suppose in retail generally, there's been far too much discounting, and you look at the supermarkets in particular, cutting each other's throats over continual discounting. It's not sustainable, it's not good. And more retailers we're working with are saying we want to move towards being full price retailers. We don't want to discount. And the reality is they still do. It might be a quarterly sale or it might be a monthly, whatever, but they still do. And it's still an important part for consumers driving value. Whether it's cashback through Checkout Smart, whether it's a straightforward discount, consumers want that type of promotion. I think the balance is to run fewer promotions, better offers, and actually increase margins in other areas. That's what we encourage our retailers to do. But the beauty of technology means you don't have to discount on a blanket basis. You can be really, really targeted with who you promote offers to. It doesn't need to be everybody knows that this deal is available, especially using mobile. You can limit things to one-time use coupons only. So you could say, I want to target this segment of customer that are my most loyal customers because I know the footfall data, or whatever the scenario is, and only they will get that, and it will make them feel special, and it will drive sales, and it will drive footfall. But you don't then devalue the brand. So I think those types of formulas will be around, whether they're in that format or not, whether it's snapping receipts or whether it's maybe slightly more integrated than that. They will be around, and I think that the real key to it is personalisation. Comes back to that.
And I think on that point, though, the key to personalisation is actually providing value to that customer and getting them to buy into the idea of what they're going to see and how they're going to receive it. Because you can imagine walking down the high street and your phone continually pinging every time you walk past a shop. It's not going to be a good experience. And in fact, it's going to impact us more than the amount of emails that we get. Because this phone is in my pocket. It's in my personal space. You'd better have a good reason to talk to me on it. And actually, if you do so, and if you explain to me why you want to talk to me on my phone, then actually I'm probably more likely to engage with you. So actually the quality of contact increases as well. So I think we've actually run out of time. So I'd certainly like to thank Matt for your insight and contribution this afternoon. And on one closing note before you go, I'd just like to provide you with a conversion rate on smartphones. It's currently 1.4% in August. So still a little bit lower than what we're seeing overall, but it's increasing. So year on year, it was about 1.1 last year. So actually, we're starting to see customers getting more engaged, and they are actually starting to spend money through their smartphones. And on that note, I'd like to thank you very much for your time. Thank you.